There's a warning most Leos don't hear until it's already affecting them. It doesn't arrive as betrayal. It doesn't arrive as conflict. It arrives as a subtle emotional shift from someone you trust. One day you notice it. Your success is met with shorter responses. Your happiness is acknowledged, but not celebrated. Your presence is still welcomed, yet something essential is missing. And you start asking yourself a dangerous question. Am I overthinking this? You're not. When you are a Leo, your growth is impossible to hide. Your confidence, your joy, your momentum, these things change the balance in your closest relationships. And not everyone who loves you knows how to handle what you're becoming. Jealousy doesn't always look like competition. When it comes from someone very close to you, it hides in restraint, in politeness, in silence that appears respectful but feels cold. And that is why this warning exists. Because the real risk isn't that someone envies you. The risk is that you begin adjusting your light to keep someone else comfortable. Leo, this message is not here to accuse anyone. It's here to help you recognize why your intuition has been speaking more clearly lately and why ignoring it would slowly cost you your confidence, your joy, and your sense of emotional safety. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. And if you've felt this quiet tension with someone you care about, stay with me. What you're about to understand will change how you protect your energy without dimming who you are. Part 1. Why jealousy comes from someone close. You don't let people into your inner world because they are convenient. You let them in because at some point, your heart recognized alignment, shared loyalty, shared direction, a quiet understanding that says we rise together. But here is the truth many Leos learn late in life. Not everyone who walks beside you is prepared to walk at the same pace forever. When your life begins to expand, when your confidence no longer needs to announce itself, when your sense of direction becomes undeniable, the emotional balance inside close relationships shifts. What once felt equal begins to feel uneven, not because you changed your values, but because you outgrew the version of yourself the relationship was built around. This is where jealousy quietly enters, not as hatred, not as competition, but as discomfort. Because your growth does something powerful. It reflects back the distance between who someone is and who they once believed they would become. And for someone close to you, that reflection can feel personal. They don't want to lose you, but they also don't want to confront what your evolution reveals inside them. So instead of growing alongside you, they hesitate. They pull back emotionally. They stop celebrating as openly. The closeness remains, but the energy no longer moves freely. And you feel it not as suspicion, but as confusion. Here is the life lesson in this phase, Leo. Closeness does not guarantee compatibility over time. Some relationships are built for a chapter, not a lifetime. And when you evolve, the relationship must evolve too, or it begins to strain under the weight of unspoken comparison. This is not betrayal, it is reality. And the earlier you understand this, the less likely you are to internalize someone else's discomfort as your responsibility. Take a moment to reflect. Comment if you've ever noticed someone close to you change once your life started moving forward. Not to accuse anyone, just to name the pattern. Because once this dynamic goes unspoken, it doesn't disappear. It simply changes form. And in the next part, you'll see how jealousy hides so well that even a perceptive Leo can mistake it for support. Part 2. How jealousy hides in plain sight. Jealousy rarely announces itself, especially when it lives close to you. If it were obvious, you would recognize it immediately. You would name it. You would respond to it. But hidden jealousy doesn't want to be seen. It wants to stay close enough to observe you, measure you, and quietly adjust itself around your progress. For Leo, this is where confusion begins. Because what you notice is not hostility, it's inconsistency. The tone changes. The enthusiasm fades. The support becomes conditional. Someone who once leaned in now listens from a distance. Someone who once celebrated your wins now responds with polite acknowledgement, as if joy has become something to ration. And because the words still sound kind, you hesitate to trust what you feel. Hidden jealousy often wears familiar masks. It can sound like concern when you're doing well. It can appear as humor that lands a little too sharply. It can show up as silence where excitement used to live. Nothing confrontational, nothing you can point to without feeling dramatic. And that's exactly how it works. Leo, your nature is generous. When something feels off, your instinct is not to accuse, it's to self-correct. You ask yourself if you shared too much, if you moved too fast, if your confidence made someone uncomfortable, Without realizing it, you begin negotiating your joy. This is the subtle danger. Because hidden jealousy doesn't weaken you by attacking you. It weakens you by training you to doubt your own emotional signals. Here is the life lesson in this part of the journey. When support becomes inconsistent, pay attention to patterns, not explanations. True alignment feels steady. It does not require you to decode mixed signals or justify your happiness. When warmth turns selective, something deeper is asking to be acknowledged. This is not about becoming suspicious of everyone around you. It's about respecting what your intuition notices before your mind tries to soften it. Take a moment and reflect honestly. Comment if you've ever felt someone grow quieter when you started doing better in your life. Not to label them, but to recognize the experience. Because once jealousy stays hidden long enough, it stops being about them. And in the next part, you'll see how this dynamic slowly teaches Leo to shrink, not out of fear, but out of loyalty that has nowhere left to land. Part 3. When Leo starts to self-edit without realizing it. This is the part most Leos don't notice until much later. Hidden jealousy doesn't push you away all at once. It stays close enough to influence how you show up. At first, the changes feel harmless. You share a little less. You celebrate a little quieter. You soften your excitement before it leaves your mouth. Not because you're afraid, but because you're trying to be considerate. You tell yourself you're being mature. You tell yourself not everyone needs to know everything. You tell yourself it's better to keep the peace. But slowly, something important shifts. You begin filtering your joy before you experience it fully. You hesitate before speaking about your wins. You instinctively downplay progress that once felt natural to express. And the most dangerous part is this: you don't feel oppressed. You feel responsible. Responsible for not making someone uncomfortable. Responsible for not creating distance. Responsible for maintaining emotional balance. Leo, this is where loyalty turns inward and becomes self-restriction. Not because someone demanded it, but because you sensed discomfort and adapted without being asked. This is how hidden jealousy steals from you, not by confrontation, but by quiet conditioning. Over time, you forget what it felt like to be fully expressive without checking the room first. You don't lose confidence, you redirect it inward where no one can react to it. Here is the life lesson in this stage. Any relationship that requires you to edit your joy is already costing you more than it gives. True closeness does not demand smaller versions of you. It expands as you expand. When your light needs permission, something fundamental is misaligned. This doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It means your growth has reached a point where it can no longer be negotiated. Pause for a moment and be honest with yourself. Comment if you've ever caught yourself holding back good news just to keep someone comfortable. Naming it is often the first step toward releasing it. Because once Leo starts shrinking quietly, the issue is no longer jealousy. It becomes a question of identity. And in the next part, you'll understand what jealousy truly is beneath the surface and why it was never yours to carry in the first place. Part 4. What jealousy really is beneath the surface. At this stage, it's important to remove blame from the story, because jealousy at its core is not cruelty. It is grief. It is grief for a life someone imagined they would live. Grief for a version of themselves they postponed. Grief for courage they kept promising themselves they would find later. When someone close to you feels jealousy, it is rarely because they want to take what you have. More often, it is because your becoming forces them to confront what they avoided becoming. Your progress makes their delay visible. Your confidence highlights their hesitation. Your joy exposes the cost of their inaction. And for someone who is not ready to face that truth, resentment feels safer than self-examination. So the mind protects itself. It reframes your growth as arrogance. It minimizes your effort. It searches for flaws to soften the discomfort of comparison. Not because you deserve it, but because it allows them to stay emotionally intact without changing. Leo, this is why jealousy from someone close feels so confusing. They can care about you and still struggle with what your presence awakens inside them. They can want good things for you in theory until those good things become real, visible, and undeniable. Here is the life lesson in this understanding. You are not responsible for healing what your light reveals in others. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. Understanding someone's pain does not obligate you to carry it. When your growth triggers discomfort, that discomfort belongs to the person who feels it, not to the one who inspired it. This awareness changes everything, because it frees you from trying to fix, explain, or soften your existence to preserve harmony. Take a moment and reflect on this honestly. Comment if you've ever sensed that someone's tension toward you had more to do with their own unfinished journey than anything you did. Because once you stop personalizing jealousy, you regain something essential: clarity. And in the next part, you'll learn how Leo is meant to respond to this awareness with wisdom, not suspicion and strength, without closing the heart. Part 5. How Leo protects energy without becoming cold. Once you understand what jealousy really is, the question becomes simple but not easy. What do you do with this awareness? Leo, your path is not to become suspicious. It is to become intentional. Wisdom does not confront every discomfort. It observes patterns over time. It notices what expands you and what quietly drains you. And it makes adjustments without drama, without explanation, and without needing permission. This is where many Leos evolve. You stop over-explaining your choices. You stop announcing every plan. You stop offering early access to dreams that are still forming. Not out of secrecy, but out of respect for what is becoming sacred in your life. Jealousy feeds on access. The more someone knows, the more they compare. The more they compare, the more resentment grows. When you reduce access, you reduce friction. Your energy stabilizes. Your joy feels safer inside you. This doesn't mean cutting people off. It means choosing levels of closeness consciously. Some people get your presence. Some get your progress once it's complete. And some no longer get a front row seat to your inner world. Here is the life lesson in this phase. Privacy is not distance. It is discernment. You are allowed to protect your momentum without explaining yourself. You are allowed to grow quietly until your growth can stand on its own. The right people will not question this. The wrong people will feel exposed by it. And that reaction tells you everything you need to know. Pause for a moment and reflect. Comment if you're learning to protect your peace without shutting down your heart. This is a transition many Leos go through, often silently. Because when you stop negotiating your light, something powerful happens. You don't lose connection, you refine it. And in the final part, you'll see why this entire experience was not a setback, but a rite of passage into a more sovereign version of yourself. Conclusion: the rite of passage. Leo was meant to walk. What you've experienced was never just about jealousy. It was a threshold. Every Leo reaches a moment where their light becomes undeniable, not just to the world, but to the people closest to them. And when that happens, relationships are tested, not by conflict, but by truth, by whether closeness can exist without control, by whether love can remain steady when admiration quietly turns into comparison. This is where many Leos misunderstand the lesson. They believe the warning is about other people, but the warning was always about loyalty to yourself. Because the real question was never, who is hiding jealousy? The real question was, will you stay loyal to your becoming, even when it makes someone uncomfortable? This is the moment where Leo steps into sovereignty. You stop explaining your growth. You stop justifying your happiness. You stop dimming what was never meant to be negotiated. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Here is the final life lesson of this journey. True closeness never punishes you for rising. The people meant to walk with you will not require smaller versions of you to feel secure. They will not need you to slow down, soften your joy, or hide your progress to preserve connection. Real alignment feels safe, expansive, and mutual. If someone can only love you when you are manageable, they were never meant to hold the future version of you. And that is not a loss, that is alignment. Leo, your light was never the problem. It was the invitation. An invitation for others to rise or to reveal where they chose not to. Take a moment before you go. Comment if this message helped you understand a relationship differently, not with blame, but with clarity. And if you're a Leo, share what part of this journey you're currently in. Naming it often dissolves its power. If you're ready to continue walking this path with awareness, strength, and the kind of self-trust that doesn't ask permission, subscribe and stay close to this space. These messages are for those who refuse to betray their own becoming. Your future does not require approval. It requires alignment, and you are already stepping into it.